All right.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our meeting today. The meeting, I'd like to call it to order. It's 9:30 a.m. And I wanted to start out by introducing myself, Lauren Boucher at Park Ridge, the new chair, and Tammy from Grays Lake is the vice chair, and Kim Nevins from Zion Benton is our secretary.
Good morning, everyone.
So we'll be monitoring the chat, or if you'd like to raise your hand to speak, we'll do our best to see that you're heard. And I also wanted to mention that this is the first of 4 meetings. We'll be having one November 16th, Wednesday, February 15th, and May 17th. So let's go ahead and see if there are any revisions or additions.
We don't have any comments. Well, it looks like Lauren has disappeared.
Lauren, you're muted still.
Okay, thanks. Sorry about that, everybody. So are there any revisions or additions to the May 25th minutes? Okay. Seeing none, the minutes are approved as written. Are there any additions to the agenda? Okay, and seeing none, we can move on to Rachel with the staff reports.
Good morning, everyone. A detailed staff report with the links to the relevant documents and the registration pages for training sessions are in the packet. I will not take the time to read through the whole staff report today or Virginia's staff report, but I would like to summarize some of the key points. As you know, Polaris was upgraded to 7.2 last night. Information on how to register for the training sessions for version 7.2 is in the packet. The LEAP hour for serials and acquisitions training for 7.2 are both scheduled for September. The 7.3 upgrade will be more exciting for catalogers because that will be the upgrade that is supposed to correct the deduplication functions that have been missing and will hopefully allow you to have the full cataloging workflow in LEAP. This should be scheduled for the fall, but we don't have a specific date yet. Another important document that you should review is the CCS cataloging profile for the Rails World cataloging services. The link to the draft is in the packet. Nancy just sent me back the final version, so I will send out a link to that to the listserv after the meeting. Because this document is completely based on the local cataloging procedures, it does not have to be approved via a motion. If you do have any local needs, such as file delivery issues or local subject headings, you will need to speak to Nancy about creating additional documentation for your specific requirements. Virginia is not able to come to the meeting today. Her report is in the packet. It includes some important updates to LCSH and reminders. So I'd like to highlight the two reminders. First, please do not add the LCSH subdivisions to the homosaurus terms. Homosaurus terms are only supposed to be in the subfield A. The second reminder is that the genre terms should only be added in the English language. Are there any questions in the staff report?
Okay, I don't see any, so we could move on to the scrap report.
Okay. Links to the minutes and the recording of the previous scrap meeting are in the packet. So I won't review the whole meeting. However, I do want to point out that since the meeting occurred, I have made several updates to the catalogers wiki, and the links to those pages are in the packet. Please take some time to review them. Some of those revisions were just adding additional examples, making the explanation a bit less wordy, but we did also add a statement of a previously approved policy that had not been added to the wiki, basically just explaining that staff can update other libraries' volume fields in order to make them match, but that the staff needs to contact the library when they do so to inform them that it's been happening, that it has happened. So that is on both the communications etiquette page and the multi-volume call number page. Are there any questions about the scrap meeting or the wiki pages that have been updated?
I don't see any.
Okay.
So we can move on to business.
Great. One moment. So the first agenda item under business is not very long. I just wanted to let everyone know that I added the abbreviation for tome or tomo to the multi-volume record page because it was pointed out to me that some libraries used various different volume designations for it instead of the traditional T period. So it's just T period. So the next thing I'd like to do is to review creation of item records from the templates in Leap. Library staff have started to use Leap and pointed out that the workflow for creating the item records from templates in Leap is a bit different from the client and unexpected. Leap doesn't actually output the call number prefix to a preview screen before the item record is created the way the client does. And I contacted Innovative about it. They assured me that this is not a bug. This is how it's meant to be, but this is really confusing. So I have updated the documentation on how to create the item record from the template in the CCS webpage. And I'd like to demonstrate briefly how to do this in Leap. So I'm going to switch screens again. One moment. So I have a bibliographic record open. And to create the item record, you can do so by clicking on Actions and then create item. So right at the top is a drop-down menu for the item template. And I'm just going to scroll down and find an item template that will have a prefix in it. So this probably won't be the correct one for the specific book, but it should have a prefix. So as you can see, the template has not output the call number prefix to the classification section. However, you do not have to type it in. It has updated all of the fields below the classification section for the collection and assigned branch, etc. And then you can just press create item. After you create the item, it does output the prefix. And if you have any cutter or any other information, it will output that. So I just wanted to let everyone know that when it's missing, don't panic. It's normal. You don't have to type it in, and you'll see it after you press create item. Are there any questions about this issue?
Don't see any.
Okay.
So we can move on to enhanced 505.
Great. So since the previous reminder to use the enhanced 505 note, staff have reported that there have been new records added to the catalog that were missing the enhanced 505 or had a 505 that was not enhanced. So today I'd like to review the requirements for the note again. An enhanced 505 is necessary only for short story collections by multiple authors, plays, literary collections, fairy tales, song titles, which do include sheet music or music CDs, Supreme Court cases, and collective biographies. This is an example of what the enhanced 505 should look like in the record. So it has the title and the subfield T and the statement of responsibility in the subfield R. In order to help you accomplish this quicker, there is a macro that you can add to OCLC connection. So today I'd like to briefly demonstrate how to do this. So in the packet, I do have a link for the instructions for how to add the enhanced 505 macro to OCLC connection. From this, you'll find a link to Joel Hahn's macro page. So I'm going to open that up. And this is a bit different than how you would add that CCS macro book because we do need to copy some text to connection. So I'm going to demonstrate the steps for doing that. The first thing you need to do is to download this macro book file at the top by just clicking on it. And then from download, you can copy the macro book. And then navigate to the program folders. So depending on which connection version you have, it has been updated recently, you may find the connection folder either in program files or the program files x86. When I downloaded 3.1, it put them in program files. And within the OCLC connection folder, you'll click on program and then macros and paste the macro book file into this macros folder. Okay, so now I have to open up OCLC connection so that we can find that macros folder. The macros are in the Tools drop-down menu. And then hovering over macros will open another drop-down menu, and then you can click on Manage. So if you've added the CCS macro book as well, you will then see 4 macro books: CCS, DOE, Nick Ads, and OCLC. When you click on Nick Ads, you'll only see the macro called Include Functions. So what you have to do to add the Enhanced 505 macro is to click on Nick Ads and press New Macro. So then I'm going to call it Enhanced 505 and press OK. And this adds it to the description, but then you have to type in the name again, Enhanced 505, and then click on it and press Edit. So to find that text, you can just scroll down to find Enhanced 505, copy or highlight all of the text on this page, and press copy. You need to highlight the existing text on this macro page and press paste to paste in the text over the existing text, and then save. So when you run that macro, once you have that record open, you can go back to Macros, Manage, click on Enhanced 505 and press Run, and that will run the macro to add in that subfield T and subfield R.
Brian in the chat asks, could you please explain the difference between using a / subfield R versus a subfield R parentheses when identifying responsibility in the enhanced 505?
One moment. So in the packet, I included a link to the page that shows the appropriate formatting. And I haven't seen an example with a subfield R in the parentheses. However, the / subfield R is a typical format used when enhancing the 505. And also when I've seen the / used when not enhancing the 505 that have the /. It's basically the same as it would be if you were using the / before the statement of responsibility in the 245 field. But
can you hear me? This is Brian speaking.
Hi,
yes.
Brian.
So my understanding is that when you use a / it is actually a responsibility of an author or a composer, but if you are using parentheses, it's like that's a performer that's just singing the music or something like that. That's been my understanding. So is there any indication that that has been a rule, or has that changed?
I have not actually seen that before.
Michelle,
I've seen brackets. When brackets are used, it means that it's not actually on the title page or the statement of, or the table of contents, but I haven't seen the parentheses. Like you said, if you do know where that documentation is, please do send that to me so I can look at it.
in the chat, Michelle is saying that it's in bid formats. In the bid formats and standards page has an example of it.
It's just that if you have a a list on a CD of different performers, or I'm sorry, I know a better example would be that if you have a CD by someone like Garth Brooks, and there are featured artists that are performing with him on certain songs, then those featured artists are put in parentheses with a subfield R instead of a / subfield R. That's been my understanding.
Okay. Oh, here's an example I see under this this example in statement of responsibility. It has a subfield R. It does have the main musicians and the arrangers, and then in parentheses after that, it has additional instruments or additional musicians playing the instruments. So you can definitely follow this format. And Sandy
Yeah, I was
says she used-
equating the subfield R following a /, not unlike the subfield C in the 245.
So there will be still be a / before the subfield R. But after the subfield R, if you do feel the need to add additional performers in this manner, you can do so with the parentheses. So I see that here is a case where the performer is in a parentheses, but there's no other additional statements. So it's the Ballad of Hicks Blewett. And I would assume that that could be like a folk song in which they may not necessarily know who the composer is. And they put the flutist in parentheses here.
And
Sandy said she used it for a collection of short stories and audiobooks where each story had a different author and narrator. The narrator went in the parentheses. So feel free to follow this format. The example that I showed was specific to a short story collection with different authors that wouldn't have this need. If you feel the need to put anything in parentheses, that's fine. Are there any other questions on this issue?
Okay, then should we move on to Brad Peterson? He was going to talk about changing audience in the leader.
All right. So I've noticed for a couple months now that some youth books that I've cataloged have later then been changed to the adolescent audience level. And it seems to be that some libraries are including, have a different definition of young adult and have like a middle school young adult section, or including those in there. So they're changing the type. I don't know if it's done by when they import the record or if it's being done manually, but it can cause issues when our staff are trying to find items for patrons and they're trying to sort and they select youth, and some items that would be there are not listed anymore because they're adolescent. It's like changed to adolescent. And it looks like only one or two and everyone else has it as youth in their collections, but it's being changed. And the vendors and the OCLC record also have it as youth. So I was just wanting to know what the rules are for changing audience levels in the leader and the mark record. Is there any guidance from CCS regarding this, or?
We haven't documented this specific case on the catalogers wiki yet. I'm not sure which specific library is making the change or if they have any local policy to do so. We may need to speak about this issue at Scrap. So I know there are some libraries that put middle grade in the YA section and some leave it in juvenile. Adrian posted that the target audience does have an age range, 14 to 17 for adolescent and 0 to 15 for juvenile. But those two do overlap, which I think is where the confusion is. So I was wondering if anyone is here from a library that does mark their middle grade books as adolescent instead of juvenile and makes that switch. Kathy is asking if we should consult with PASS regarding their preference. That could be a good idea. I was thinking of doing a survey on middle grade so we can figure out how all of the different libraries are handling the middle grade books so that we can even like add that into the diversity audit page. So that may help us identify specific cases on how they handle the target audience.
Adrian noted that special note on the wiki says that for items that fall between two audience levels, choose the younger of the two.
Thank you, Adrian, for posting that. I think that's a good guideline.
And it is true that some books fall in both collections.
Right. It can be difficult to choose how to label them when they do.
This is something that needs to be discussed further in scrap.
We might want to just discuss the page to see if we can provide additional guidance or clarification on the topic. So it's John says that he changes the audience to D for young adult and adds in the 655 young adult fiction. Michelle's found it helpful to see where most of the libraries on a title have classed it. If the library has it in young adult, but everyone else has it in juvenile, then she leaves it alone. If most have it in young adult, but the code is J, then she usually changes it to D. Adrian suggests changing the guidance so the age ranges don't overlap. I think that could be helpful. It's very confusing to try to even figure out what the age range could be for some of the young adult books. And Anita comments, code it J in the 008. It's just a broader scope than either coding it C or D.
Okay, well, do we want to move on to shortening titles in the 246?
Okay, so there, I've also noticed that some titles have had the additional 246s in that are just shortening titles. And for one example, the book title is My Own Lightning, and there's a separate 246 for just lightning. Or another one is The Castle of Tangled Magic, and it's just Tangled Magic. I don't know who is adding them or why, but it just seems it's kind of superfluous, and I kind of like to discuss about who's adding that, like someone's adding them and they like to explain the reasoning, or if we should be just leaving those alone, or do we need to talk about the rules for adding extra 246s like that?
It may be that it was already in the OCLC record and that some other library has a practice to do so.
The
If
ones that
it's
I've
just-
seen have not had it in any OCLC records.
Adrian says in the chat, I think that might come from confusion around whether the PAC will search a title if it's truncated in the middle. And John said possibly due to font use on the cover for those words, or for big words. Really big ones. And Adrian says also might be based on how patrons ask for titles. Is it an issue of it just cluttering up the record?
Yeah, it's just extra 246s that don't really seem to add, or, I mean, I understand using 246s when there's numbers or there's it's and or plus signs or things like that, but it's just, I don't know if we need multiple for when it's, the title is relatively straightforward. I mean, is there access issues if there's so like truncated parts of it, of the, I mean, I've tried it and I haven't seen any issues with if you have My Own Lightning or not like that, but ones where it's truncated has it. And keywords, yeah, keyword searches search the whole thing. And I also think, yeah, title search might have it, but how many patrons are really searching that way? And examples, I can give control numbers if people want to see. One would be control number 4084340. I'll put it in the chat. There's another one.
Okay, well, perhaps we should just be a little bit more judicious about adding words that would be found in a keyword search in just the main portion of the title.
it doesn't harm it. I agree with Jamie, but it's also something that I think wouldn't necessarily affect the search capabilities in PAC because of how keyword search. A lot of people just look for a title that they find elsewhere. So they tend to just copy the whole title from some external source.
Okay, well, do we want to move on to cleanup projects?
Sure, one moment.
Thanks, Brad.
Okay. So recently it was brought to my attention that a library had discovered that they had charged a patron $25.01, which is the default, for a lost magazine issue. So this happened because the item record did not have a price for that magazine issue. And so the process for cleaning up any item records that have missing prices is multi-stepped, and so it's kind of complex because it has to involve both the item records and the serial holdings records. So I wanted to review the steps for correcting this issue so that it doesn't affect future item records. So first, you would need to run a report in Simply Reports to identify the magazine item records that are missing the price. So this can be done using an item list report. And then you would need to use the filter labeled checkbox filters and check the box for missing a price. And so there's a link to a page with information on how to run that report in the packet. After you've identified the item records, you can do an ad hoc bulk change or a bulk change from a record set to add in a lower price to those item records. But then you need to modify the publication pattern in the serial holdings record by adding in the price for each of the serial holdings records that are affected. And this will allow any new item records that are created from that serial holdings record when the issue is checked in to add the price to that new item record. So I don't have time to review all of those different steps as a demonstration today, but if you would like to schedule a separate meeting with me to review those steps, feel free to contact me via the help desk at help@ccslib.org. Are there any questions about this process?
I don't see any.
Okay, great. So the next issue is a new report that Bob has added to Web Reports. So it's called Items with Mismatched Volume Numbers. So the first image, I kind of squeezed two images into this slide right here at the top, is how it looks in Web Reports. And then below that is how the spreadsheet will look when you download it. So this will help you to identify those cases when the volume designation of your item records is different from everyone else's volume designation. This report will be output to Web Reports once a month on the 2nd of each month. And so you can plan to regularly look at this on a monthly basis and clean up any volume records that may be different from everyone else's. So the first column is the bib ID, so you can find those bibliographic records. And Bob has labeled the volume patterns with a specific volume type name. So you will see the most common pattern type name in the second column, an example of that most common pattern type in the third. The fourth column is just the number of records that have that most common pattern type. In the last two columns, you will see the information on your own item records. So your non-common pattern type will be in the second to last column, and then the examples of your non-common volume numbers. So I've highlighted a couple of examples of ones that clearly need to be corrected. So you can see these two examples in the red box are for year. And this library has included the edition and the year in their item records. So they're going to want to look at that and correct it so it matches. It's important to match so that the holds can be placed properly on the item records for all volumes. Another example is this volume number. The most common pattern type is a volume V period and then the space in the number. But this library has added a year or a season in the year in their volume designations. You will find some that do not necessarily need to be changed in the spreadsheet. So a good example is this bottom one first set. So you can see this has mismatched to an item record that says book only. So if this were a case where the set included a book and CDs or book and DVDs, one library could have labeled that as set because all of those are on one record. But if another library has separated the discs from the book and labeled it as book only or CD only, those could be legitimately correct because they've separated them into the record. But again, it's useful to look at each case and just double check and make sure that the case matches. So one library may have separated it and just said book and not book only. And so you would want to make sure that those properly match to each other. Are there any questions about this report?
I don't see any. So we could move on to reminders.
Okay, great. So my first reminder in this section is to please check the audiobooks on CD to make sure that all discs are audiobooks. Some have an extra CD-ROM for a PDF with no audio on the disc. This should not be in the audio disc description in the subfield A. This should be in the subfield E for one computer disc, and then in parentheses, PDF, semicolon, 4 3/4 inches. The next reminder comes from Mieko. It is related to circulation, but she did want me to mention this issue at the CAMM meeting just in case anyone has experienced this situation. Mieko received a report of missing items that were checked out with a missing item barcode. This is an obsolete practice that should not be in use by any libraries. So when this happens, the item is still visible in the pack. So please ask any staff that may still be using this practice to review the documentation on missing item records and update their procedures to match the current policy.
Kathy wonders what a missing item barcode is.
So a missing item barcode is like a patron barcode that has been assigned the name missing item instead of like a real patron's name. So it's like a fake patron barcode. So it's something that used to be in use when CCS was using Circe Dynex, but it's not a process that we can still use with the PAC and Polaris. So the next issue is that I'd like to review our deleted item record procedures. We recently received a request to recover deleted records that had been double deleted. When an individual presses the delete button twice, we cannot recover a deleted record. Pressing it once marks the record for deletion. If you press the delete button the second time, it will completely delete the record. In the same way that the monthly purge deletes the record. So it's best only to press that delete button once and wait for the monthly purge to delete the record. So it can be helpful to just check the record status to make sure that it doesn't say delete before you press that delete button. I was also recently made aware of a new test prep. Oh, there's a question. Kathy asked if staff double delete the item records, are those items counted in the CCS reports? In the CCS reports, there is a count based on the amount of records that exist before and after the period. So that would include it. But I'd have to take a look to see if the actual report has deleted records based on the amount that have the deleted status. I'll have to get back to you on that and check with Bob. Okay, so the next topic is a review on the travel guides, test prep books, tax prep books, and law guides. So recently a new test prep book was added to the old multi-volume set record. The current policy is to use single volume records for any new travel guides, test prep books, tax prep books, and law guides. So you will see those older multi-volume records still in the pack because those are still being retained until all books are withdrawn and that record can be deleted. So if you do see those, please just bring in a new record for each new year that you purchase one of these types of books for, and not use the old record. Are there any questions?
Okay, so we could move on to Shirley Rothberg from McHenry has wants to talk about TOMS for Wonder Books and Box Books.
Yes, hi, thank you. Don't think I've met most of you. Hi, I'm Shirley. I'm going to put some examples of bib control numbers and what their TOMs are so people can take a look while I'm talking in the chat. There we go. So on the cataloging wiki, we have pretty precise instructions on what we're supposed to do for the leader, the 006, the 007, so that we actually get a TOM of audiobook. And when working on Wonder Books in particular, because that's what I've worked with more, so if Fox books are different, someone can chime in. But with Wonder Books in particular, I've noticed a huge number of records are having completely different toms. Most of them just show up as sound recording. And most of the wrong ones, the majority are audiobook correctly, but quite a lot are showing up as sound recording. And also when I bring in new records from OCLC, I'm noticing that an enormous number of the records that are available there are directly from or originally from Find a Way World for the Wonder Books. And they're cataloged as like book first as opposed to audio first, which is how we get the audiobook tom. And so part of what I wanted to bring up was just this reminder of like, hey, just check the cataloging wiki to know exactly how to do it so it shows up the way we've agreed to, but also to bring up as potentially a point of discussion, do we want to, yes, as to catalog exactly what Kathy said in the chat. The wiki specifies that Wonder Books should be cataloged as sound recordings first rather than books first, whereas Find a Way World in OCLC is putting out records that are book first usually, which is why I wanted to not just bring this up as hey, reminder, but also potentially a point of discussion where most of what can be found on OCLC, if we're bringing in new records, we would have to derive records. Now, I have absolutely no problem doing this. I have the ability to do it. I don't know if every library has someone who can derive OCLC records. I don't know if this is something that some libraries see as too much of a time sink. So I just, as I said, I wanted to bring that up for discussion.
Can it just be corrected in the pack once the record is imported? Instead of deriving a new record from it?
Yeah, but I could be wrong. My understanding was that we want records that at least kind of match what's the OCLC number that we have attached to it. And
Right.
so changing something like whether it's book first or audio first, that would be a big enough change that it doesn't really map anymore if you're just changing it in Polaris.
OCLC wants to keep the amount of records to a minimum in OCLC so they don't have to merge them. And Michelle stated that OCLC says a different type is not a basis for creating a new record. So I think the best practice is to just remember to change it locally.
All right. Then I think that kind of drops most of my concern in terms of like keeping things the way they are. So I will leave it as the reminder.
Jamie, what other group did you have in mind? Pass or UX? We can consider it. I'm not sure if that's necessary right now since it already has a policy that's on the wiki. But Virginia will be bulk correcting all of the records that have the wrong tom when she gets back from vacation. So they should match, and it's just a matter of going forward to make sure that it's correct for future records. But I can ask Deborah about that to see if she'd be interested in discussing that issue with Pass or UX.
Kathy asks, can the wiki be updated with the reminders and what things need to be changed to display the correct toms?
The wiki does have the correct times, but it doesn't say that you need to watch to make sure that it's correct. So I could add a note stating that the OCLC record could be wrong and this needs to be changed locally.
Okay, well, thank you, Shirley.
Could I actually, Kathy had asked an earlier question that I think we
Oh.
missed. What implications does changing a book record to a sound record or sound recording record have on updating holdings in OCLC?
It does not have any implication on the holdings. The holdings only use the OCLC number.
Thank you.
Okay, so we could have a technical services open forum now if anyone would like to discuss anything else related to cataloging, acquisitions, processing, or any other technical services questions for the group. If not, does anyone have any announcements?
I do.
Oh, great.
Currently in the process of forming is an LGBTQIA plus SACO funnel, and I am kind of a member of that. We've decided some co-chairs so far and are still picking the final name. So if I ever mention it again, it might be under a different name. However, I wanted to bring that up to everyone because if you have any suggestions for subject headings in that area that you think LC should have, or genre terms, I can bring that to the group and to the funnel and try and make that happen.
Okay, great. Thank you. Do we have any other announcements? Okay, if nobody has any other announcements, we could adjourn. Our next meeting is Wednesday, November 16th, via Zoom at 9:30 a.m. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll motion to adjourn. This is Tammy.
Hi, Tammy. Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Excellent. Lynn Rubio, second. And the meeting then is adjourned at 10:28. See you in November.